Hello everybody, it's J.Silver again. I got a fun little three-part video because I couldn't fit it reasonably into one or two parts on basically a general character guide walkthrough. Um, I got a couple disclaimers I gotta get through first before we get to the characters. But yeah, that's what we're getting to today. So if you like this video, make sure you check out parts 2 and 3. We're going to get through a handful of the 4-star characters this video, and then the second video will have the rest, and then the third will be the 5 stars. So first disclaimer, I see a lot of, I'm not trying to start beef with any YouTubers. That's not my goal here, but I do think it's good advice to give for you guys to not pay attention to any tier lists out there, especially at this stage where the game's not even out yet. Anyone who's releasing a tier list of some sort, is including this website, is like full of crap. In blunt terms, I mean, the developers can and will change things all the way up until Tuesday. We already know of multiple units being changed from the beta, and that's just from leaks, and I'm not going to talk about those leaks at all. I don't want to get strikes, but you can seek them out if you wish to. So any type of tier list here is that you hear of is pretty garbo. It's not a good take. It's just people trying to fish for views. Also, there's no, in like Genshin and in Star Rail, there's no real, like, there's people that would be in Genshin with Amber. You can play any unit you want to and beat the game. There's no PvP. There's no meta. Like, the idea of a meta in these games is kind of always silly to me. You should play which characters you like, so that you'll have more fun with the game. Don't feel like you're being forced into playing any character at all. So as I go over these characters and give you guys pros and cons, if one character seems to have more cons than pros, don't take that as don't play this character. If you like it, play it. It'll make the game more fun to you. Second disclaimer. It's a meme in the community, I know, to make fun of like the quote-unquote end game of Genshin, or in this case Star Rail. When I use the term endgame, I just mean a point in the game where your account rank is high enough to farm like 5-star relics, where you're working on simulated universe progression, where you're trying to clear this game's version of Spiral Abyss. That's the stage of the game you're at. If you think that that's not good enough, that's your prerogative, but that's what I mean when I say that. In this game, like if I'm talking about a unit's viability in early game, where you're just trying to get through the campaign and stories, versus viability in end game, meaning like you're trying to clear hard difficulty versions of simulated universe and Spiral Abyss equivalent for this game. Also, on top of all of that, just for perspective for people who haven't played the beta and the closed test lasted like a month to 2 at max, depending on what we're talking about here. People and buying, all spending is turned off in these modes. People did not get to experience these characters at high eidolons, which is Star Rail's version of constellations. They did not get to experience them with light cones that were even appropriate for them, or at high refinement. They didn't get to experience even the end game that we're talking about, like that I just covered, to any great depth, because by the time they got to end game, there was only like a week left of beta, or a week left of the closed test. Maybe there's some characters that, like, players that have, like, just played the game nonstop, 18 hours a day for the whole like 2 months or whatever, and got much further than other players. But even those people, like, you're capped on the amount of energy you have. Like, this game has a resin system. It's not called resin. It's called like Trailblaze power, but it's a similar system. You're capped on how much you can do. Just think of how much progress you can make in Genshin from the beginning of the game if you were given 2 months. You could get pretty far. You may be able to clear Spiral Abyss, but you're not going to be able to do it and have like tried out all the characters, really even fleshed out all the characters, even the ones you have that you're playing. Like, they're not going to be like fully built at all. It's just not something that's like feasibly possible. There's not enough events. There's not enough rewards. You're, especially with the cash shop turned off, you're not able to spend anything. So people who are saying this, claiming that they have experience in the beta or the closed test and they know what they're talking about, one, everything they could do, like everything they're talking about could have been changed, and two, they didn't have enough time or resources to do what they're claiming they've done. So keep that in mind, including me. I also have played the beta. I'll be talking about my experience in that, but this is not something that you should be really that like concerned about. All right, so the last disclaimer I have is just a general concept of healers and team comp strategies. So I talked about this in my previous video, Genshin versus Star Rail. So if you guys haven't seen that video, I recommend checking it out. It gives a general overview of how this game plays and what you can expect, especially if you're coming from Genshin. It's not as I like both games, so it's not. I know the title sounds a little controversial, but it's not. I do both games love. Check that out for a more in-depth look. But I wanted to give a disclaimer here on both of those. So first off, unlike Genshin, where you may want to have two fire characters or pyro characters in Genshin for like the 25% attack buff, in this game you're attacking enemies that have a shield, a toughness meter it's called, and until it's depleted they get massive damage mitigation. So you want to target that with one of their weak elements. They basically have a weakness. They have a couple normally. And you can target that and then lower their toughness meter. And then once that toughness meter is gone, then you can attack and deal lots and lots of damage to their health. You can attack them with their toughness meter without a weak element and still deal damage to their health. It's just they have massive damage mitigation. The strategy for team comps is generally, there are exceptions, but the general rule of things is to have as many different elements as possible so that you can hit as many weak points as possible. Right. The second thing to keep note of is that healing is very limited in this game. There are literally only 2 healers, 2.5 if we're going to get technical, and I'll explain the half in a second. But we have Bailu, who's a 5 cost, and we have Natasha, which is a complete free-to-play unit. She's given to you at a certain point in the story. So aside from these two, when I say half a character, the Trailblazer has a technique point. Technique points are abilities you can use outside of combat that generally give you a buff or some type of effect like before combat begins to give you an advantage. You have a limited amount of technique points, and you can find canisters in the open world that kind of rejuvenate them. And the canisters, like, they're kind of like, think of them like exploding barrels or something in Genshin. Like, they come back as you leave and go to areas. So that you have a steady supply of them, but they're not infinite. The Trailblazer has a technique point that can heal your entire team for, I think it's like 10% of their max HP. But that's an out-of-combat thing. It helps them stay topped off, but it's not quite the same thing. Like, they can't be used in combat at all. So if a character gets weak, that's it. The only other character that has a heal in the game is March 7th, but it's locked behind her very last eidolon, so you'll need 7 copies of March 7th before she's an actual healer. And then at that point, comboed with her shield ability, when I cover March 7th, we'll go more into detail of this, but comboed with the rest of her kit, she can be a solo healer for your team, but it's, again, locked behind, massive, it's her very, very last eidolon. So really, there's just 2 healers in the game at launch, kind of 2.5. So when I talk about characters and what they're trying to do, if I talk about the healing problem, that is what I'm talking about. However, as new characters come out, we won't be stuck at 2.5 healers for the whole game's life cycle. There will be many more that release, so that weakness of the character may be solved very, very quickly. All right. So with that said, let us get into the first couple 4 stars. I'm going to probably try to cover this first row in this video with all this disclaimers out of the way. All right, so let's cover Arlan. Arlan gets memed on in the community a bunch. He's probably considered, maybe him or Herta, as the worst characters. I disagree about Arlan pretty heavily, so I'm going to try to give him his due here. and explain to you like what I think about him. All right, so his HP really high, attack is this about average, speed is always going to be anything like massively above 100 is high, but most things just sit somewhere around 100. His defense is very, very low. All right, so he's an electric character. He's also a destruction character. His big reason why people dislike him is that he consumes HP. This ability right here, his skill 1, he consumes 15% of his max HP to deal lightning damage, equal to 160% of his attack to a single enemy. This skill cannot be used if Arlan's HP is too low. So if he has below 15% HP, can't consume 15 HP, can't use the skill. He also hurts himself. There's a healer problem. Also, one of the healers, if we go back, is an electric unit. And we just talked about how our team comps don't really want multiple of the same unit. So really, Arlan only has one healer to be paired with to make up for him hurting himself and also his defense being so low, so he's going to take a lot of damage when he's hit. Okay? This is the main reason why people don't like Arlan, and he's very difficult to use. All right, his ultimate deals lightning damage equal to 210% of his attack to a single enemy, and he deals 90% of his attack to every adjacent enemy. This is a blast attack. That's how blast attacks work. One target takes a lot of damage. Adjacent enemies take a less amount of damage. All right, his talent. This is why he hurts himself. Arlan's damage is increased for every percent of HP below his max HP, up to a max of 40% more damage. So, more he's hurt, bigger damage steroid, big nuke. All right? So you want to consume his HP, and you want him to get hit, then he's low, then you use his ultimate. His ultimate gets a massive damage steroid. You kill things. That's his basic kit. All right? Let's look at his ascensions. When his HP is at 30% or below, him defeating an enemy, so when he kills something, when he's below 30% HP, he'll restore 20% of his max HP in health. Pretty cool. He has a big, in-kit self-heal. That mitigates in like a big amount his some of his healing issue, but he can't fully resolve around this because he's gonna be taking more still than he's gonna be healing. His dot resistance increases by 50%. This is important because dots happen at the start of a turn. So if he gets dotted up, and he's really low on HP because he's hurting himself and he has very little defense, he may die before he does anything, because we're hanging out a lot of the times at low HP ranges. So dots are very dangerous to him. All right, his Ascension 6, upon entering battle, if his HP is 50% of his max HP or lower, he gains a barrier that nullifies the next incoming attack. All right, so because we're hanging out at low HP and your team's HP does not heal after each consecutive fight, think of it like Pokemon. You go into a battle, you have your turn-based combat, and then you go into the next one until you go to the Pokemon Center. Your guys aren't healing, so he's hanging out at low HPs a lot. This gives him basically a free pass on the first round of combat. So if his speed is lower than the enemies, they can't just one tap him because of our strategy of keeping him at low HP. That's basically what we're why this is how this works. All right. His eidolons. This just lets you use his skill 1 when he's below 15 percent HP, and he just goes to 1. So he's still able to use his skill even when he's below 15% HP. This isn't really that big of a deal. It's not as big of a deal as you think it is. His skill 2, the damage increase on his skill is not really that relevant, but when he's dispelling a debuff on him this is a pretty good. This helps his consistency a decent amount. It keeps him a little bit safer, which is what we want, so that he doesn't just die randomly on us while we're hanging out in low HP ranges. His Eidolon 4 is probably what gives him the most effectiveness and survivability. Is once per battle he self-resurrects back to 25% HP. So he can stay alive longer in fights, and he can hang out at these lower HP ranges more consistently without just losing him by accident. And now his Eidolon 6. This is just a big damage steroid. We talked about how his ultimate is a blast. The big part of this is this part right here, where his multiplier on adjacent enemies is increased to that of the target enemy. So the blast is now equal to like at all on all 3 targets. And also, all of it's increased by 20%. So if we look back at it, 210% to the first target, 90% to adjacent. When you hit Eidolon 6, this 90% is going to now be 210%. And then on top of that, the 210% is going to get increased by 20%. So it's not 230%. It's actually like, I'm not going to do the math. I'm not a math wizard, but it's like you're taking 20% of this and then adding it to this. Okay. So I explained why people don't really like him that much. This idea of staying in low HP ranges is very dangerous, and he has to be paired with Natasha. And I'll get to Natasha in a bit, but she's not like, I don't really like her that much. She has like personally, I think she has some issues both in when you get her and how you get her versus, and also her kit not being really doing anything aside from healing. There's no other utility really that it offers you. And we'll get to her in probably part 2. But anyway, that's why people don't like him. Where do I think he actually shines? I think people never, I never got close to Eidolon 6ing anybody. I got close to Eidoloning 4 a couple of people in the betas and the closed tests, but never 6. I think his Eidolons are really important, specifically 4. I think 4 is very, very important for him to being usable. And I also think, I think 2, the self-cleanse is pretty powerful, and I think 6 is, this damage steroid is very high. So I think he's very Eidolon dependent. And also this Ascension 6. I don't think I Ascension 6 to single unit. Maybe I did 1, but I don't think I did. So I'm not sure I ever got to play with anybody at Ascension 6. Which means, and I played the beta a lot. So maybe I did it to 1 character. I'm not sure though. I was able to clear most of the things without doing that. I do think that he is very much an end game character. I think that where he will shine is when you have high eidolons on him, at least 4 and maybe even 6. And then I also think if we look at light cones, nobody either in the beta got to play with high refinement light cones. Like there was no way you didn't have the resources, you couldn't spend money, you couldn't, there weren't very many events, you just didn't have the resources, and there wasn't much time either. Like they were only going on for a month or 2 max. You didn't have like high refined light cones. Now, if you look at this one, right, this has his face on it. Increases damage dealt by the wearer by 20, 25, 30, 40%. They also deal extra damage to enemies with a higher HP percentage than the wearer. That's exactly what he wants, right? This is kind of the standard go-to like light cone for him. I think, though, when you get into super endgame, I think Nowhere to Run may actually be better on him. I think this self-healing HP on him may be better. I think it'll make him consistently be much more useful. I think you'll be hit low, and then you'll be able to heal yourself to be 60 to 70% HP. Then you're going to get hit low again, get your stamage steroid, and then heal yourself back up. I think that's much more reliable with his kit than staying, especially like this. And now this requires, right, this to be at 24%. Like you need max refinement on Nowhere to Run for this to work. But I would imagine that this build would be very powerful on Arlan. And I don't think it's ever been tested in any of the betas or closed tests, because no one's ever been able to do like Arlan C6 and Nowhere to Run like at max refinement. Like it's just not something that's possible to do. But I do think Arlan is very I don't think you should invest in him early game, guys. I think you'll struggle with him hurting himself if you're playing through campaign, especially since you're not given Natasha until like about I wouldn't, it's a little before halfway, but it's not it's not that it's very close to halfway, like probably 40% through the main story. I don't think if you pull him during your, normal wishes that you get for your beginner's banner. I don't recommend building him right away, but I do think he has a lot of potential in the end game on min-max team comps. I think he can actually really shine. I think people are kind of discounting him a little too much. So if you like his character, you think he's cool, and you want to build him, go for it. I think he has a lot of places to shine in the end game. All right, let's look at Asta. Asta is pretty straightforward. I don't want to have to say as much about her, most likely, as Arlan. She really is really strong support. She has a quintuple hitting. She hits a single art with 4 more bombardments that are random. So 5 hits altogether, and they deal the 4 extra ones are to random enemies though. All right, so how do toughness meters work? Toughness meters, the shield bar we talked about earlier that gives damage mitigation, they don't really go down significantly more with higher damaging skills. So you actually want to just hit them a lot of times and not really like with one powerful attack. So using this skill on a boss that doesn't have very many adds can very easily take away the entire toughness meter, or at least like significantly reduce it, depending on the boss we're talking about, if they're weak to fire. So this skill is great against adds because of her talent, which we'll get to in a second, but it's also great against bosses who are weak to fire. So great skill all around. Her ultimate is a AoE speed increase. Speed increases in turn-based games are always strong. Action economy is very good. So making your team go more and making your opponents go less is always very strong in turn-based games. So great ultimate. All right, her talent. This is where she's a little underwhelming at lower eidolons, okay? Her biggest weakness as a kit is that she's very eidolon focused, and very skill focused until you get your eidolons. What I mean by that is that she kind of consumes lots of skill points. Your team, if you haven't played the beta or the any of the closed test, your team using a skill requires a skill point. You have 5 skill points that your team pools together. You gain a skill point back when you use your basic attack. So characters that are heavily skill dependent means that you have to have another character that's almost never wants to use their skill, and they can just fully charge the skill points that everyone else is using. So Asta, when we get to her eidolons, you'll see what I'm talking about. She requires you to use her Meteor Storm a lot to keep her talent active. So what does her talent do? She gains a charge stack every different enemy hit, plus an additional stack if the enemy has a fire weakness. For every stack she has, all allies attack increase by 5% up to 5 times. So at max stack, she can give 25% attack, which is a lot of an extra bonus attack to your whole team. So when you use her Meteor Storm against a bunch of adds, and you get lucky with the bounces, it's very possible to instantly cap this out. It happens very often. All right. Now, starting from her second turn, her stack count is reduced by 3 at the beginning of every turn. So she goes from, if she had max stacks, her next turn you'll go from 5 to 2. Okay, which means you'd have to Meteor Storm again to max it out. Now, also remember this, by the way. When you use your ultimate, that counts as a turn. So if you Meteor Storm and then that fills your energy up, and you want to use your ultimate to give everybody a speed increase, you're now immediately back down to 2, and now your team is sped up, so they're going to go in and they're not going to get this 25% attack damage right away. All right, so keep that in mind as well. Now let's look at her Ascensions. Her Ascensions are pretty lackluster in my opinion. Her basic attack can apply burn. This isn't really that important because she has a very small attack. She's not in the game, she's not there to deal damage. She's a support. So this is like a very lackluster Ascension in my opinion, unless you're on a team comp that wants dots on people. So it's good if you're on a team comp that wants dots. Otherwise, not really that relevant. It's not going to deal a lot of damage. increasing on the field, all allies have increased fire damage. This isn't really that important either because you want teams that have multiple different elements. There's very, very few team comps at launch that you would want to have the same element things. It's possible you may want to do this, but it's the exception, not the rule. And then she gets a defense increase for each charging stack in her possession. This is a little survivability extra, but nothing really crazy. There's no real crazy ascension power we have here in any way. So eidolons. So this lets her skill deal another hit. So now it's 6 hits instead of 5. So you have just that extra RNG chance to hit an ad you didn't hit yet, so that you have a max your stacks out right away. After using her ultimate, her stacks will not be reduced to the next turn. This is awesome. This lets us actually use her ultimate directly after we gain energy from using her skill, okay, and maxing out our stacks. This is our very, very big kit Eidolon. So Eidolon 2 is very important. Eidolon 1 is nice, but it's not really crazy. Eidolon 2 is pretty crazy. Eidolon 4, she gets energy rate increase for 2 or more stacks. This isn't that insane. I never had Eidolon 4 on her, but I never had issues with keeping the uptime of the her ultimate, like her speed increase. I never really had that much issues keeping uptime on it. I don't think I had 100% uptime on it, so maybe this gives you 100% uptime, but I'd have to play with it to see. But I don't think this is a major deal. Eidolon 6, she loses 1 less charging stack every turn. This is very big, and I'll explain why. So when if she loses 1 less stack, that means instead of losing 3, we lose 2. So we'll go from 5 stacks at maxed out to 3. Which means that we can then just use our basic attack once we max out our stacks on a fire, because remember, we get an extra stack if we attack something that has a fire weakness. So if we just attack fire weakness enemies with our basic attack, we can go from 3 back to 5, and we're now no longer skill intensive to keep our attack buff up. So she now can basic attack and generate us skill points. So 6 is literally drastically changes the way she plays as a character. This is monumental in what she's doing and specifically about her talent. Now, I talked a lot about her talent. Do I think that her talent is the be all end all for her kit? No, I do not. I think she's completely viable with 0 eidolons and not min-maxing her talents bonuses whatsoever. I think that her Meteor Storm being a really great toughness meteor destroyer on fire weak bosses is very good. I think Meteor Storming ads and not using her ultimate right away and just giving your team 25% attack is really good. And I think these turns of speed increasing are very, very strong. I don't think that I don't think you need to have this min-max talent to be operate her at the best she can operate. I don't think you need it to make her playable. Obviously it helps, and you can play her better with the eidolons that let you use her talent more effectively, but it's not needed to make her very, very strong. All right, Heng. Heng, fastest character we're gonna go through. He's single target DPS. He's actually the only single target win DPS basically in the game. Bronya can do a lot of damage, but she's really a support more than she is a a single target DPS. In the part 3 video, you can find Bronya and we can talk about it, but there's only 3. 1, 2, 3. Yep, there's only 3 win characters. Sampo is AoE. He's single target. So single target damage. Also notable that he applies a speed debuff. The only other speed debuff in the game currently is on a 5-star. It's on Welt. His third skill, or his ultimate, is a single target DPS. It does even more damage if you attack a slowed creature. His talent gives you wind resistance pen if you target him with an ally's ability. He is one of the starting characters of the game. March 7th is one of the starting characters of the game. March 7th has an ability that targets an ally, so the game gives you everything to turn all of this on. There's lots of he is the class that Don Heng is in is the hunt. There's multiple hunt characters that have this exact same ascension too, where they're less likely to be attacked if they're below 50% HP. This is a very common passive. Ascension 4, he gives himself a speed buff, pretty nice. Ascension 6, he deals extra damage to slowed enemies, which he applies slow to. So cool. His basic attack does. Eidolons. Increases his crit rate against people. This is situational. I don't really like his Eidolon 1. I don't like min-maxing my crit rate and stuff around enemies that have like greater HP than 50%. It just seems silly. I'm not a big fan of this one. Talent cooldown reduction by 1. This one's also not that big of a deal. It's like his talent gives you wind resistance when he's targeted by an ally. This is like, you're not going to continuously target him over and over and over again, most likely. So the cooldown is not even that relevant anyway. When using his ultimate to defeat an enemy, his next. This one is very powerful. It just is a massive, turn, action economy thing. It gives him a free extra turn right away. It's very powerful. The increase of his slow is really good too. He's a single target slow, unlike Welt, who's AoE, but he's a single target DPS. So you're gonna target like a boss with this, and like the boss is gonna get less turns, so it's very powerful. He's really good. If you like his character, play him. If you like, there's very limited wind character options, so chances are if you're looking for a wind unit, you're gonna run Don Heng because he's given to you anyway, and he's good. So he's really easy to fit on teams. I played him a lot. I used him a lot. I built him. He's fun. I don't think Eidolons or constellations in Genshin terms, but Eidolons, I don't think they're needed at all on him, really. 4 is very powerful. That's it. 1, 2, and 6 are not really that great. 6 is cool. Like, it makes his slow better, but it's definitely not needed to hunt for them. All right, last but not least for this video, we're going to talk about Herta. Let's see here. Herta is also the other 4-star that's memed on a lot in the community. AoE units in general are in a weird place in the game because of the way the toughness meter works. You can't just, like, in a lot of turn-based games, you can AoE, like, you can defense break and then AoE things down, and that's like a speedy way to clear combats. In Star Rail, this toughness meter that we have to get through before we can do like significant damage to the health bar acts as a deterrent for AoEing like down units, because she can only deal ice damage, and most combats don't have every single unit having the same weaknesses on their toughness bar. Like you face a diversity of enemies that all have different weaknesses. So you'd have to have like 3 AoE units and 1 unit that like applies like a defense break. And then even then it like may not work. I don't know if I never tested that. I don't know if anyone else did, but I'm not sure they did. Also, normally it takes more than 1 attack to break a toughness meter. You can't just like hit them once, even with a powerful skill, and break the toughness meter. So that's really the main reason why. But she is really strong that she's ice, so all of her ice damage attacks have a chance to freeze, and freezing is turn denial strong. So AoE, and all of her skills are AoE basically, except her basic attack. AoE skill with just a higher multiplier. When an enemy's HP falls below 50%, she AoEs everybody. But an ally also has to be the one that causes it. When an ally causes the HP to fall below 50%, she AoEs everybody as a follow-up attack. Damage boost. Resist crowd control effects. Ultimate deals more damage to frozen enemies. She's AoEing everything, so she should be triggering freeze at least somewhat frequently. If the enemy's HP is at 50% of their max HP or less, her basic attack deals additional ice damage equal to 20% of Herta's attack. This is fine. It's not anything special. A basic attack damage steroid. Her Eidolon 2 and 4 are very interesting. I'm curious if these are worded correctly and or not going to be changed before the game comes out. Basically every ability like this in the game, aside from on Herta, have a cap, like a max amount of stacks that you can get. This does not clearly, neither does her Eidolon 4, which implies that they can be stacked infinitely. They just obviously reset at the end of a fight. However, when you're farming, you do like 6 fights in a row, 8 fights in a row. This can be very like, this can stack very, very high, and so can this. She may be like, because she's an AoE unit, like she may be like one of the better farmers in the game, potentially, if these really do stack infinitely. We'll have to recheck in on this once the game comes out on Tuesday and or Wednesday, depending on where you are. And then her Eidolon 6 just is like increases her attack after she uses her ultimate. Nothing crazy special here. That's the only reason people meme on her really is just because AoE units are just like in a weird spot, and she doesn't really do anything outside of AoEing, aside from it being like freezing because she's a cryo unit, an ice unit. All right, that's it. The only other thing I wanted to talk about is like I'm definitely coming from this from a free-to-play perspective. I plan to be playing as free-to-play. So that means I'm going to be focusing banners that have 4 costs that I like. I'm not normally going to pull based on a 5-star. I'm going to be pulling based on like 4 stars that the banner have. So like a character that, if a banner only has 1 character I really want, I'm like a 4-star character that I really want eidolons for it, I may not be pulling on that banner. Like I just, as a free-to-play player, that's the way I think the best way to play is. You're never going to be able to eidolon up a 5-star all the way as a free-to-play player, but you can reasonably eidolon up 4 stars all the way if you target your banners correctly. So that's my plan going forward. You guys can talk about yours, but I'm going to pick 4 stars that I really like, and then I'm going to build my team comps around them, and then I'm going to try to eidolon them up all the way. So that's where I'm coming from with my advice here, guys, and like kind of my perspective. Take that in mind. If you like this video, give me a like and subscribe, please, and make sure you check out parts 2 and 3. And if you haven't seen my previous video on Genshin versus Star Rail, that video just goes through basically like the systems in place that are in both games, and Star Rail and systems that Star Rail has kind of tweaked or changed a little bit from Genshin. So it shows off both games. I love them both. So please check that video out too if you haven't. Thanks. See you in part 2.